The war in Ukraine is one of the most complex issues, the biggest crisis of our time. And it impacts all parts of our life. It impacts the Israeli Gaza issue as well, because of the involvement of Iran. And 3 years after Russia's full scale invasion, 10 years or so after Putin's annexation of Crimea, Ukraine is struggling with manpower shortages, Russian territorial gains, wavering Western support. And meanwhile, Donald Trump, now back in the White House, has vowed to bring an end to the war, though his methods are unclear. And next week, at the Munich Security Summit, General Keith Kellogg will present Trump's proposed peace plan, and neither Kyiv nor Western leaders know exactly what to expect. And given Trump's penchant for grand bargains and unconventional ideas, such as turning Gaza into a Riviera, his vision for Ukraine could be anything from strategic pragmatism to outright fantasy. And Trump has suggested he could end the war in 24 hours, though he later revised this to 6 months. And his main priorities seem to be a quick deal with Putin, sort of sidelining Zelensky. And Trump believes his negotiation skills can deliver a ceasefire where others have failed. Economic incentives over military aid. He may push Ukraine to trade mineral resources, titanium, lithium, rare earths in exchange for US support, and a settlement favouring Russia. And some speculate Trump might offer a deal to Putin, where Ukraine cedes territories in exchange for peace and the lifting of sanctions. But Zelensky is not keen on compromise that would reward Russian aggression, and any suggestion of freezing the conflict without full Ukrainian sovereignty restored would be seen as a defeat in Kyiv. For Putin, Trump's unpredictability is both a threat and an opportunity. The Kremlin would welcome an easing of Western sanctions, but it remains unclear whether Putin would agree to withdraw troops or relinquish territory. Of course, everything changes if Putin is confirmed as dead. Everything changes because there could be a leadership change in Russia, which could be presented as a reversal, and the problems could be piled onto Putin as an excuse. And while Trump plays deal maker, the situation remains dire in any other context, in any other scenario. Ukraine is losing ground. Russian forces continue to make incremental gains, especially in Donetsk, but nothing significant. North Korean troops are reportedly deployed in the Kursk region, a sign of Russian reliance on external reinforcements. Ukraine has launched limited counteroffensives into Russia's Kursk region, though these remain symbolic rather than strategically defensive and decisive. And weapons shortages are worsening. NATO's stockpiles are depleting, and continued US military aid under Trump is uncertain. But at the same time, Kyiv's development of alternative weapons and drones is astonishing. These realities strengthen Putin's bargaining position for the most part, unless Ukraine receives substantial reinforcements and the military tide could further shift in Russia's favour. European leaders are deeply uneasy about Trump's return and his America First approach to foreign policy, and key concerns include Trump's reduced commitment to NATO. He suggested that Europe should take primary responsibility for Ukraine's defence. Britain's cautious stance. The Foreign Secretary has stated that he sees no near-term peace talks with Putin's refusal to negotiate, and France and Germany preparing for a worst-case scenario and ramping up defence spending in case the US pulls back. The Baltic states disconnecting from Russia's power grid, a final break from their Soviet past, signalling increased European self-reliance. And meanwhile, former UK Conservative MP Jack Poresti has joined Ukraine's Foreign Legion, underscoring the continued grassroots support for Ukraine within Britain, despite political uncertainty and despite serious questions about the role of mercenaries, even if Liz Truss advised it. Trump's foreign policy increasingly resembles an imperial vision. His recent statements include reclaiming the Panama Canal from China, buying Greenland, taking control of Gaza to redevelop. His admiration for authoritarian leaders like Putin and the Chinese president suggests that he may seek a grand bargain, one that serves US economic interests while downplaying human rights and sovereignty issues. And Trump's leverage over Putin is questionable. Putin has little domestic pressure to end the war, his authoritarian grip on Russia is tightening, and the economy, while under strain, has not collapsed. Sanctions have hurt but haven't crippled Russia, and Trump's threats of economic warfare, tariffs, oil price cuts, and so on, may not be enough to force Putin into a meaningful concession, unless Putin is actively looking for a way out, which he may well be. Or the people who are controlling Putin may be looking for a way out. For Putin, Trump is a useful but not indispensable agent. He may welcome the chance to negotiate with Trump, but is unlikely to surrender occupied territories without extracting major concessions. And the fundamental problem with Trump's peace strategy is that it hinges on ignoring Ukraine's sovereignty. A deal without Kyiv's full involvement would be politically disastrous and useless. Overestimating Putin's willingness to compromise, because Moscow is playing the long game, undermining NATO's unity, with Trump's America First approach could fracture Western resolve. And European leaders, particularly in France and Germany and Britain, are preparing for the worst, a scenario in which US support diminishes and Ukraine is left to fend for itself, relying on us. Zelensky, meanwhile, is playing a brilliant and a careful game. He needs to keep Trump engaged without allowing him to dictate a bad deal. And Trump's initiative could reshape the war for better or for worse. He could broker a peace deal that secures Ukraine's sovereignty. He could claim that as a historic victory. But if his plan cedes territory to Putin in exchange for economic incentives, it will be seen as a betrayal of Ukraine and a boost to authoritarian aggression and a signal to others. At the heart of this debate is a fundamental question. Does peace mean victory for Ukraine or simply an end to the war at any cost? And the answer to that question will shape not just Ukraine's fate, but the future of global security itself.